Hello everyone! In this video, we'll explore TopoLVM, a powerful tool that transforms local storage on your Kubernetes nodes into first-class persistent volumes within the Kubernetes system itself. We'll demonstrate this on Google Cloud, even though TopoLVM is typically used for bare metal Kubernetes clusters. However, the principles remain remarkably similar across different environments. If you're following along in a cloud environment, you'll need relatively low-level control over your cluster. In Google Cloud, we'll switch to the standard cluster type instead of autopilot, and then we'll adjust a couple of important settings. For cost reasons, we'll select a zonal cluster rather than a regional one, and the default node pool will reduce the node count to minimize expenses. Now let's configure our node settings carefully. We need to select Ubuntu as our operating system because it allows for easier low-level changes. Next, we'll add local SSDs by choosing an N2 machine type which supports local solid-state drives. We'll configure 2 local SSDs per virtual machine. In the advanced settings, there's a critical option we must enable, raw block local SSD. This is very important because it prevents Google Kubernetes Engine from automatically integrating these disks into the Kubernetes system. We want to handle that integration process ourselves to have full control. A quick but vital warning, please watch your costs closely if you're following along with this tutorial. Make sure to delete your cluster when you're finished testing, since this is not a free service and can accumulate charges. Before we start working with kubectl or Helm commands, let's explore our new cluster by connecting to one of the Kubernetes nodes via SSH. To do this, open your cluster in the Google Cloud Console and click on the VM instance link for one of your nodes. Remember, these are just regular Compute Engine virtual machines that have been integrated and managed as part of the GKE cluster. Once we're inside the node, let's examine what we have. If we list the file systems, we won't see anything yet because we haven't actually mounted the disks. However, when we list the disks themselves, we can see 2 blank SSDs. They're attached to the machine but completely unused and ready for configuration. To prepare these disks for use with TopoLVM, we need to add them to an LVM volume group. First, let's check if LVM is installed by trying to display the volume groups. If the command errors out, it means LVM isn't installed on the system yet, so we'll need to install it. Oops, we want LVM2 for storage management, not LLVM for compilation. After installing the LVM2 package, we can begin configuring our disks. The first step is straightforward. We'll run the pvcreate command on both disks. This command initializes the raw disks so that LVM can recognize and work with them. After running pvcreate, we can verify our work with the pvdisplay command, which will show us our physical volumes are now ready. Next, we need to create the volume group using the vgcreate command. We'll name our volume group myVG1. This is the default name that the TopoLVM Helm chart expects. You can choose a different name if you prefer, but if you do, make sure to update the naming in your Helm chart installation later to match your choice. Let's perform a sanity check with the vgdisplay command to verify our setup. Excellent. We now have a 750 GB volume group ready for action. Now let's switch over to our other node and repeat the same steps to ensure both nodes are properly configured with their volume groups for LVM storage. With our volume groups successfully created on both nodes, we can now move to the Kubernetes side of the configuration. Let's activate Cloud Shell as our way to run Helm and kubectl commands. Cloud Shell is a convenient option because it has all the necessary command line tools pre-installed and it's free to use. Of course, you're welcome to use your local terminal or IDE if you prefer. Our first step is to add the TopoLVM Helm repository so we can access the installation charts. After adding the repository, we'll update it to make sure we're pulling the freshest code and the latest version available. Next, we need to authenticate with our cluster so we can run commands against it. This authentication step is essential before we can make any changes to the Kubernetes system. Now let's create a dedicated namespace for the TopoLVM system. This helps keep everything organized and separate from other workloads. We'll also add two important labels to this namespace. These labels serve a critical purpose. They prevent the TopoLVM mutating webhooks from being triggered when pods and persistent volume claims are created in these namespaces. This is important because the webhooks depend on the TopoLVM controller to function properly. Therefore, the webhooks should not be activated during the TopoLVM startup process. If they were to activate too early, it could cause the system to become stuck or hang, creating mysterious problems that are difficult to troubleshoot. Now comes the exciting part, installing TopoLVM and its prerequisites. We'll use a single command that first installs cert-manager, which handles TLS certificates, and then installs TopoLVM itself in the namespace we just created. This one-liner command will also create all the custom resource definitions that we'll need for both cert-manager and TopoLVM to function properly. After the installation completes successfully, you might notice something amusing. There's a to-do note in the output. Let's do a quick sanity check on our namespace to see if the pods are coming up correctly. Excellent. The pods appeared about 40 seconds ago, and they're all running cleanly and showing as healthy. That's a good sign that our installation was successful. Now let's actually use the TopoLVM system and see it in action. If we check our storage classes, we'll see a brand new TopoLVM provisioner that was automatically created during the installation. Let's take a closer look at this storage class. It uses XFS as the file system. It supports online expansion, which means you can grow volumes while they're in use, and it carves storage space for each node's local pool. This is the magic of TopoLVM. It takes that local storage we configured and makes it available to Kubernetes as dynamic persistent storage. Let's stress test the system with a quick pod to see how it works in practice. At the top of our configuration, we'll create a persistent volume claim called myPVC that will be bound to a single pod. This PVC is using the TopoLVM provisioner storage class we just looked at. Then we have a basic container that will mount this storage. What this does is request 1 GB of storage from our new TopoLVM system and attach it to the pod. Watch how quickly this happens. The persistent volume claim is bound almost instantly, and our pod transitions to the running state very quickly. Now let's examine what things look like from the node's perspective. If we SSH back into the node and run the df command with the human readable flag, we can see the basic storage that's now being managed by LVM. We have a new mount point showing up, and we can see that we have exactly 1 GB pulled from one of our disks in our volume group. These are essentially separate partitions that we're creating dynamically against our disks. Remember, we have a volume group of about 750 GB total capacity, and we've allocated just 1 GB of that to this pod's mount point. If we switch over to the other node and check its storage, we'll see that it's still completely unused. Both nodes are part of the volume groups we created, but it just so happens that our pod was provisioned and scheduled against the first node. This demonstrates how TopoLVM works with Kubernetes scheduling. Storage is allocated on whichever node the pod lands on. This is a really important point to understand. TopoLVM offers a powerful and convenient way to use local storage in Kubernetes through an open source project. However, this convenience comes with a critical trade-off. Your storage is tied to the lifecycle of the specific node it's provisioned on. This means that if you have node upgrades, for example, your data could be deleted when the node is replaced or re-imaged. The data lives and dies with the node. For production environments, you'll usually want to layer on some sort of redundancy strategy. This could be at the application level, where your application itself handles replication, like with databases that have built-in replication features. Or you might consider something like Ceph, which provides redundant block storage on top of these local disks and persistent volume claims. The key is planning for redundancy, since the local storage itself doesn't provide any fault tolerance. If you'd like to support the channel, consider starting a free trial of our new design tool, which is linked in the description, and let us know what you think. We'll include all code and the diagram file in the description as well. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment section and we'll do our best to respond. Thank you very much for watching till the end, and please enjoy responsibly.